Hi and welcome to Cragl. We develop tools for the visual effects industry. This is an overview on the most important features of smartElements, a feature-rich element library that runs inside Nuke and Standalone. You can use this video to get a good overview on all major features smartElements offers for you. However, it does still not cover all details. For a full list, please refer to our written documentation. Please also keep an eye on the What's New page in our online documentation. All additional features are listed in here. As you can see, smartElements gained a lot of new features and has become a fully featured element browser in the recent years, and it is in active development. Is there any feature missing? Please let us know, we'd love to hear your voice and discuss this with you. The best way to learn about smartElements is by watching this video and by reading the online documentation. smartElements is used by studios of all kinds of sizes and by individual users and freelancers all around the world. Now, smartElements is an element library that you can use to organize your elements, but also 3D data and even toolsets. To get these into your working file, simply select one or many elements and drag and drop them into your node graph. Or right-click and choose Insert from the context menu, or simply by using the shortcut I. Before going into any details, let's have a high-level overview at smartElements anatomy. So on the left, you navigate through your libraries using stacks and lists, live filters and tags, which we'll have a look at in just a second. In the middle, you obviously find all your elements. On the top, you find multiple viewing and filtering related features. We also have a look at these within this video. And on the bottom right, you find 3 buttons to switch to different sections. The first button shows you the current view. The second button shows you the ingestion history, and the third button navigates you to smartElements settings, which you'll also see later. By the way, in case you get lost, click the Help button at the top right. Here you can browse directly to our online written documentation. So this is a very brief overview about all sections inside smartElements. Elements are organized in so-called stacks. You can switch between these using this drop-down menu. Each stack contains lists. Think of lists as categories and stacks as containers that group these lists. You can use an infinite amount of stacks and lists to customize your collection to your needs. To create a new stack, click the plus button and browse to a location to use as a stack. You can also browse to an existing stack, of course. You can move your stacks to a server or to your cloud, and everybody who has access to this location can use the same amount of stacks and lists. Right-click the list on the left to create a new list. Use this input to search for specific lists. If you have some lists that you constantly refer back to, why don't you mark them so that you can quicker find them? Right-click and choose Color, Set, and choose a custom color. Use Unset to remove the color tag. In order to load a list content, right-click and choose Load. Or simply select a list and press Enter. Or simply double-click it. Besides the list, you also have live filters and tags. These are additional functionalities to organize your elements. Use the eye icons to toggle the visibility of these. While lists show all elements inside that list, the live filter lets you filter your elements across multiple lists. This list contains also a search field to filter for specific live filter. Let's right-click and create a new live filter. Let's say we want to search for all elements that have fire in their name and are at least 2K in size. Let's call it fire at least 2K. In the first drop-down menu, we can choose from several components. Let's use name. In the second drop-down, we can specify a strict or loose search and even use regular expressions. And let's search for fire. So filter all names that have fire in their name. Let's click apply to get a live filter result. But let's further define our live filter. Let's add another rule and say width is larger than 2048. In the match dropdown, we can dictate to return elements that follow all specific rules or any of these rules. Use additional filters or remove them when not needed. And again, you can tint these filters to your needs. smartElements also contains a tagging system. At the top, you can also view all elements. Elements sorted by the date of their ingestion, so you can keep up with newly ingested elements, the most used elements, and all elements that haven't been tagged yet. And you also find a search field in here to search for specific tags. Tags in this list can also be tinted if needed. When selecting tags, you can choose to view elements that contain all of these tags or any of these tags. Right-click one or several elements and choose Tags, Tag Editor from the context menu. The shortcut is T. Add a tag and press Enter. You can also add several tags by concatenating them by a comma. Right-click an element and choose Tag, copy tags to clipboard, and paste tags from clipboard to paste all tags to one or multiple other elements in one go. The top section contains several features that are related to viewing and filtering elements. Use this slider to adjust the size of the elements. Here you find a playback speed dropdown. Once you hover over an element, you see it play. Let's increase the playback speed to, let's say, 200% or -50%. By the way, you can also use the JKL hotkeys for that. Press J to play backwards by 100%. Press K to stop, and press L to play forward at a speed of 100%. Hold Ctrl and press J to decrease the speed, and hold Ctrl and L to increase the speed. smartElements lets you view all your elements in 3 viewing modes. Use the viewing mode toggle at the top to switch between gallery view, list view, and film strip view. In addition, you can view elements in full screen mode by pressing the space key. Use your arrow keys to cycle through the elements. Press the space key again to go back to your previous view. This button lets you reload your current list in case anything new has been ingested in the meantime. Switching to a new list also reloads all content, but just in case you need this here. The star button lets you filter for favorite elements. Let's quickly rate some elements to see that in action. To better see that, let's quickly jump to list view. Select one or multiple elements, right-click and choose favorite, and use a rate on the selected elements. The elements get this rate number, which you can also see in this column. A much quicker way is to simply select some elements and press the number 1 to 5 on your keyboard. Now let's view only elements using a given favorite rate. Choose Reset to reset the view and view all elements. By the way, you can even see favorites from other users. For that, you need to have the favorite sync option enabled in your settings. For more information about that, please refer to our written documentation. This button toggles the playlist section, which we'll also see later. This button here shows the sidebar info for the currently selected element. Here you see additional information about an element, like the element name, the rating, the preview, a slider to scrub through the element, and here you can also set element rates. And here you can also add tags, and see some additional information, and also write comments for that element. The next button shows you your personal history of used elements. Click this button to add this element into your node graph. And this button lets you navigate to that element in your library. Clicking this button lets you filter your current list. Use the F key on your keyboard to toggle the filtering on and off. So this works similar to the live filter, but just using one rule and just for the currently viewed list. Whereas live filtering provides filtering across all lists in your current stack, and you can apply multiple filter rules. But sometimes you just want to quickly find an element, say by some particular name. So here's where you can do that. Click the magnifying glass or simply press Enter on your keyboard to apply the filter. Use this button to switch the sorting mode. The multi-play button lets you play multiple or all elements simultaneously, because sometimes it is quite important to view all elements play at once, right? Say you want to view all these elements. So click this element, hold Shift and click that element, so that all these elements are selected, and press the multi-play button. You can also play all elements. For that, simply click on some empty spot in your library to deselect everything, and then press the multi-play button again to play all elements at once. Elements contain a right-click menu. Let's right-click an element and have a look at the most important commands. For a full list, please refer to our written documentation. Now, we've already discussed that you can insert an element from here, but the quicker way is obviously to simply use your I key on your keyboard or simply drag and drop an element into your node graph. But here you can also insert an element using the right-click menu. Here you can reveal the element in your file explorer. Now, we've previously seen the favorite option, which you can access here, or simply select one or multiple elements and press 1 to 5 on your keyboard as previously discussed. Here you can add a comment to an element, which you can also see directly in the list view. Now, this comment is stored on an element basis and can be seen by everyone who browses to that element. We've already discussed the tag editor and how to copy and paste tags from one element to another. The preview submenu lets you set thumbnails for one or multiple elements. Let's select multiple elements and set the preview to the first frame. Now, in some cases, for example on explosions, fire and dust, the first frame might often be black. In that case, try out the middle or the last frame. Or you can also let smartElements find the most representative frame automatically for you. Choose Preview, use as List Preview in Home View, to use the element's thumbnail in the home view for that particular list. Now the home view is available in the gallery view mode. Here you can choose to flip, flop or flip-flop the element. By the way, once you bring that element into your node graph, it gets also adjusted here as well using a mirror node. And the same applies when you set up the playback speed. Choose Color, set to mark an element with a custom color. And Color unset to remove the custom color. Now sometimes it is useful to attach additional files to your elements, right? That is what you can do here. The files are copied to the element on disk and you can reveal these if needed. You can also add additional metadata key value pairs here. Now sometimes you might to increase the version number for an element. For that, choose New Version to browse to a new element version while keeping the current version intact. When inserting an element, you can then choose the version to insert. Here you can view the ingestion log for that particular element. Now the Media Commands submenu let you choose a variety of actions for your selected elements. And you can also create your own media commands and embed them easily into smartElements. Doing so requires a bit of Python knowledge, but integrating your own custom commands is actually pretty straightforward. Now for more information about that, simply click the Getting Started with Media Commands option and it browses you to our written documentation that explains how to create your own custom commands. Now after some time of using an element library, you might probably require some cleanup and deprecate elements, right? You can do that here using the deprecate command. Provide a reason for the deprecation and click the deprecate button. Now the element can still be seen, but it is grayed out. Hover over it to see the deprecation reason. Now you can still insert this element, but you're warned that this element is deprecated and should actually not be used any longer. Now we also see in the settings section later that we can also hide all deprecated elements. Besides deprecating, you can also move an element to a trash location and let it reside there for some more time, and from here you can then completely get rid of it if you're certain that you no longer need that element. For that, right-click one or multiple elements and choose Delete Permanently. Now you can also move selected elements to any other list. Doing so will physically move the elements on disk, so make sure any working file referencing these elements gets updated afterwards. The info view provides a quick way of viewing certain information on an element, which is particularly useful in gallery and film strip view. Select an element and hold the Alt key to show the element info for the currently hovered element. You don't need to select an element, simply hover over it and hold the Alt key. Release the Alt key to close the info view. Holding and releasing the Alt key gives you a very quick feedback of your elements. Here you can scrub through the element. Click the Poster Snapshot button to create a preview image for that current frame. The shortcut is S. Now you can create multiple poster snapshots and browse these here. Next you will find the thumbnail button. The shortcut is T. Use this button to use the current frame as thumbnail for the element. On the right hand side you find additional information on that element and its metadata. Here you can toggle on and off some sections and insert that element and also reveal it in your file explorer. smartElements provides the functionality to bundle multiple elements into playlists. Click the Playlist button at the top to toggle the playlist section, or use the shortcut Ctrl and down arrow to show the playlist section and Ctrl and up arrow to hide it. Click the plus button here on the left to create a new playlist or import an existing one from disk. All your playlists show up in this list, and here you can search for a particular playlist. An alternative way of creating a new playlist is by simply dragging one or multiple elements into the playlist section. When doing so, you're asked to create either a new permanent playlist on disk or a temporary playlist. The difference between these is how long they last. Use a permanent playlist to refer back to it even after relaunching Nuke. Click the Create Temp playlist to create a temporary playlist that lasts only for the current Nuke session. But you can always convert a temporary playlist into a permanent one. For that, right-click the temporary playlist and choose Save Permanently. The next time you launch Nuke, the playlist remains. You can now simply collect elements from various lists or even stacks. And once you're happy with your collection, you can simply drag and drop these into your node graph. And you can also share a playlist with others. Now you can even add multiple playlists automatically to other machines by using the environment variable Cragl smartElements additional playlists. Now we'll later have an additional look on environment variables, but for more information about that environment variable, please also refer to our written documentation. Let's have a look at how to ingest media into smartElements. You can also find a dedicated page called Media Ingestion in our written documentation. At the top right, click the Ingestion button. This opens the Ingestion editor. Now you can simply drag and drop a folder that contains media into smartElements. Alternatively, you can simply drag and drop media into smartElements and the Ingestion editor launches automatically for you with a dropped folder scanned for elements. Now, generally spoken, the folder you drop in here can have any nested file and folder structure, and smartElements will automatically scan the dropped folder for you. Each element is represented in one row. Now you can ingest any file and video format that Nuke can read, so including EXR, RED, DNxHD, DNxHR, and DPX, just to name a few. Now, just as a side note, you can actually also drop a text file in here, where each line points to one media, and smartElements will also detect these elements then and ingest them. Now, ingestion itself is pretty straightforward. You just need to specify where to ingest to. At the top left, choose the stack to ingest to. Now, by default, that is the stack that you're currently viewing, but you can change this here and also create a new stack on the fly if needed. All ingestions happen in parallel threads. Here you can configure how many parallel ingestions you want to run. And then for each element, choose the list to ingest to, and that's pretty much it. Now by default, that's the current list you're viewing in smartElements, but you can change that here if needed. And also create a new list on the fly. At this stage, you could already click the blue Ingest button here at the bottom and the elements would be ingested in the currently selected stack and list. But there are other optional configurations available here. Let's have a look at these. With this checkbox on the left, we can turn the ingestion on and off for certain elements. And we can also rename elements here if needed. Here we can assign tags to these elements on the fly. And you can assign multiple tags by separating these by comma here as well. And here you can transcode your media if you want and have it in another format. Let's choose one and click the Reveal button. Now this is simply a .nk file that smartElements uses to populate it with your element in order to transcode it. So you can simply create your own templates in this folder and it will be available in the Transcode Templates drop-down menu. You can also add additional templates in other folders outside of smartElements and point smartElements to it to make it available as well. For more information about that, please refer to our written documentation. Now, you can also bulk edit any of these columns here for all elements. Adjusting anything here at the top will update all element rows. You can then adjust particular rows to your needs. So let's click the Ingest button now. In the status column on the right, you see a progress for each row. Click the Info button to view the ingestion log for that particular element. Once the ingestion has finished, click the Reveal button to jump directly to that ingested element. We can also refer back to the ingestion log for a particular element by right-clicking it and choosing Show Ingestion Log from the right-click menu. Now, if you have some Autodesk Flame background, you should be familiar with the concept of hard and soft imports. By default, smartElements performs a hard import, meaning it will create a physical copy of the element in your chosen list. The original media stays untouched. However, if you prefer a soft import, meaning referencing the original media directly, you can adjust that to your needs. For that, navigate to smartElements Settings and click the Ingest Processors tab. When ingesting media, then there are several plugins involved, and here they are configured. The plugin that handles the copying of the media is called Copier. The copier has a configuration that is called Enable. True means copy the media, so do a hard copy. And false means don't copy the media, so do a soft import. Another interesting ingest plugin here is the Preview Creator. Keeping the thumbnail frame to auto will let smartElements find out the most representable frame automatically for you. But you can also set it to first, middle, or last if needed. Now, as previously seen, you can always adjust the thumbnail frame for one or multiple elements at any time by simply right-clicking it and choosing Preview, Set Thumbnail. But here you can let smartElements do that automatically for you in the ingestion process. Now, for a full list of configurations, please refer to the advanced page of our written documentation. And by the way, you can also write your own ingestion plugins to perform custom actions on any element ingestion. And you can then drop your configurations in here. For example, you could write your elements to an additional database or do pretty much anything else you can think of. And for that, please also refer to our written documentation that discusses this in great detail. Now, you can also ingest media directly from nodes. Select one or multiple read nodes, navigate to your menu bar and choose Cragl, smartElements, Register Nodes Media. Choose the list to ingest the media to and click the Register button. The element gets ingested into the chosen list. Besides that, you can also drop OBJ, FBX, and Alembic files into smartElements. And you can also register toolsets, so smartElements can also function as a toolset browser if you will. Select some nodes and choose Cragl, smartElements, register selected nodes as toolset. Enter a name, choose the list to register this toolset to, and add a comment if you like, and set a preview if needed. But you can also do these steps later at any time. Click the Register button. The toolset gets registered in smartElements and is available for everybody in your team. Now, if you're working in a team, it can sometimes become hard to keep up to date with new elements, right? Luckily, smartElements contains several features so that you don't miss any new elements. If you want to, smartElements can automatically mark new elements for you. For that, navigate to the settings and click the checkbox Inform about new elements. Whenever someone else ingests some elements from now on, all new elements get marked with a green border for you, and you also see the number of new elements in each list on the left. Select the elements, right-click and choose Mark as Seen. The shortcut is M. You can also mark all elements as seen by right-clicking any list in the list navigation and choosing Mark All as Seen, all lists. Besides that, the tags list has a history. It shows you all elements sorted by the date and time they were ingested. Another way of keeping up to date with latest elements is by generating an ingestion report. Right-click a list and choose Generate Element Ingestion Report. In the upcoming window, you can choose between different output formats, HTML, PDF, and CSV. Let's generate an HTML output. Let's print all elements that have been ingested in the last 3 months. And choose an output route. Click the Create Report button. The report gets automatically created for you, and it will also automatically navigate to the chosen output folder. The report contains all elements that have been added to the particular list within the given time frame. In our example, the last 3 months. Now, all of these features are also described in our written online documentation. We dedicated an own page for that called Keeping Track of New Elements. smartElements started a collaboration and integration of third-party element vendors so that you can browse external libraries without leaving Nuke. You can now browse the entire FX Elements library directly inside smartElements. In the future, we'll be integrating other third-party vendors as well. Let's see what you can do with this. Use the Stacks dropdown to switch to FX Elements. All third-party element vendors appear at the bottom. All data in here gets streamed live. So whenever FX Elements releases a new library or some new elements, they will automatically show up in here. You can search for lists like in any local stack. Loading a list the first time takes a few seconds. Once it is loaded, it gets cached on your end, and loading it the next time goes then way quicker. Use the navigation buttons on the top right to navigate inside a list. Select one or many elements and drag them into your node graph. Or right-click and choose Insert. Or simply use the shortcut I. These elements get also cached, so the first time this takes a few seconds, but inserting the elements once again happens immediately then. All elements are smaller size previews. But in many cases, this should give you an idea if an element fits to your needs. The smartElements tab gives you additional information on that element, and from here you can directly browse to the online library and the actual online element. Now you can also download free elements in full resolution directly inside smartElements. Right-click any free element and choose Download Media. You can also select multiple free elements and download all of these in one go. You can then ingest these elements as seen before to get access to the full resolution media. For more information about third-party integration, please also refer to our written documentation page called Browsing Third-Party Elements. smartElements can also be launched in standalone mode without requiring Nuke. Inside your smartElements installation, you will find CPython folders for each Python and related Nuke version. As an example, use CP310, which is the Python 3.10 variant which Nuke 15 ships with. Now you can browse smartElements outside of Nuke and update any element data. Now you can also ingest in standalone mode, but keep in mind that in order to doing so, you need to have Nuke installed on your machine, as the actual ingestion happens via Nuke in the background. Now in order to launch in standalone mode, you need to have Python and a Qt binding installed on your machine. For more information about that, please refer to our written documentation in the standalone page. smartElements contains many settings to customize it to your needs. Let's have a look at some important settings. For a complete settings list, please refer to our written documentation. With this checkbox, you can turn tooltips on and off for all major widgets. This checkbox can get handy when ingesting data in order to avoid ingesting duplicated elements. When having this checkbox on and when ingesting any new element, smartElements will check all lists of your current stack and see if there are any elements with the same name. If it finds one, it will warn you. You can then still go ahead with the ingestion if needed. Now we've previously seen how to deprecate elements. As seen, these get grayed out. You can, however, also completely hide any deprecated element here if you like. Turning Show Element Info tooltip on shows some important element info as a tooltip as soon as you hover over it. Now we've previously seen how to get informed about new elements. So if you would like to keep up to date with newly ingested elements, make sure to turn it on here. Now we've also previously seen that you can increase the ingest processor threads directly in the ingestion editor. But you can also drive this here in the settings. Concerning media playback, there are two options, loop and scrub. Loop means that the media loops when hovering over it. Change it to scrub. In order to make the change happen, you will need to restart Nuke. After a restart, you can scrub the preview with your mouse. In this example, let's however go back to loop mode and restart, as a scrub is also offered using the info view by holding the Alt key. But in case you prefer scrub mode as a default, here is where you can change this. smartElements offers a head-up display, or short HUD. For each corner, you can configure what you would like to see. You can also turn on a quick info for the gallery mode. And always show the element name and also the resolution and information how often the elements have been used. Now, besides the general settings, there are also settings for ingest processors and import processors. And as previously discussed before, when ingesting any elements, then there are several plugins involved in the ingestion process. And here's where they get configured. As an example, the preview creator deals with the creation of element preview sequences. The copier handles to copy the original media into the correct location, and the data extractor extracts metadata so that this information becomes available to anyone. You can also create your own ingestion processors in order to execute any custom logic as previously discussed. So here you can configure the ingest processors and can also add configurations for your own custom ingest processors. And the same concept applies to import processors. Now these are plugins that automatically run once you bring elements into your node graph. For an in-depth explanation about ingest and import processors, please refer to the advanced page in our written documentation. smartElements contains a public application programming interface, or short API. This lets you communicate with smartElements from the outside via code. So this lets you, for example, query stacks, lists, settings, and elements and manipulate them, add new entries, update and delete them, and ingest new elements, and everything outside of smartElements and outside of Nuke. Now, the online written documentation contains a dedicated page called API. This page goes into great detail on all offered functionality. And keep an eye on that page. We might add additional features to the API in the future. Let's import the API using from smartElements import API. And make a dir on the API. So these are all the functions smartElements public API offers you, and the written documentation covers all of these. Let's see some examples in here how to use that. Let's, for instance, get all currently loaded stacks. For that, use api.getStacks. And let's find out where, for example, this production stack lives. For that, use getStackPath. So API getStackPath production. To get all lists inside a stack, use getLists. So API getLists. And the name of the stack to retrieve all lists from. Now, there are a whole bunch of other features using the API, and we won't go too much into detail about that. But just to name a few, you can use the API to add a new stack using addStack, and of course also add a new list by using addList. And you can retrieve settings and save settings. Or also get all tags of all elements in a given stack using getTags. Now you can also let the API scan some folders for ingestible media using the scanForPath function, and also ingest media via the API. Another useful feature is to work directly on elements using the API. You can get an element instance by using getElement, where you specify the stack, the list, and the element name. You can then do various things with this element instance. For example, print all metadata, deprecate that element, or undeprecate in case you change your mind. Now you can get and set tags, remove tags, add metadata, remove metadata, rename elements, add additional files, just to name a few. So please refer to this page in our online written documentation if you want to find out more about this powerful feature. smartElements can be driven with various environment variables. For a full overview on all offered environment variables, please refer to our written online documentation. And keep an eye on that page because in the future we'll also add additional environment variables. So let's have a look at some environment variables stated in here. As an example, you can drive if users are allowed to do any changes like ingesting elements, moving them to other places, tagging them, adding additional files to them, commenting them, and so on. By default, all users are allowed to do all of these things. By setting the environment variable Cragl smartElements allow modifications explicitly to false, this will then remove all of these actions for the users. Another interesting environment variable is Cragl smartElements additional stacks. Now, as previously seen, users can click the plus button at the top left next to the stacks drop-down menu in order to create a new stack or browse to an existing stack. Using the environment variable Cragl smartElements additional stacks, you can add multiple additional stack paths that show up automatically for any user without the need to set these stacks manually. Cragl smartElements additional playlists is another environment variable that sets up features automatically for a user. Using that environment variable, you can add multiple playlists automatically to all users. As an example, a visual effects supervisor might create some playlists with interesting elements for a specific shot or episode. Using that environment variable can then make these playlists appear automatically on all other user machines. Now, we've previously discussed the concept of hard and soft imports. Using the environment variables Cragl smartElements ingest hard copy and Cragl smartElements ingest soft copy, you can enforce a behavior as it also overrules what is set up in the copier's ingestion processor settings on the user machine. Now, as quickly touched previously, when transcoding elements in the ingestion process, smartElements reads a certain folder for transcode templates. This folder lives in the smartElements installation root. However, you can also create additional transcoding templates that live anywhere else outside of smartElements. And using the environment variable Cragl smartElements template path, you can point smartElements to one or multiple paths to look for transcoding templates. And as you can see, there are other environment variables and additional ones will follow in the future. So please refer to this online documentation and keep an eye on additional ones stated here.